Hello, I'm Sam Lichtenstein, Stratfor Director of Global Security Analysts at RANE. This podcast is brought to you by Stratfor Worldview, RANE's premier digital publication for objective geopolitical intelligence and analysis. Sign up for the free Worldview newsletter at worldview.stratfor.com.
Welcome to RANE's Essential Geopolitics podcast powered by Stratfor. I'm Emily Donahue. Germany will hold a federal election on September 26th. It will be the first election in 2 decades for which Chancellor Angela Merkel is not a candidate. September's election outcome will influence the fate not only of Germany, but of the entire European Union. Here with details is Adriana Bissoni, Stratfor Senior Europe Analyst at RANE. Adriana, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Emily. Nice talking with you again.
Nice talking with you, Adriana. Let's jump in here. Let me know why this election is so important.
Well, Germany is the largest economy in Europe, and as such, it's a key decision maker in the European Union. This means that the federal election will not only influence policy in Germany, but also in the European Union as a whole. Whether the next German government is a conservative or a progressive coalition matters, both domestically and internationally. The impact will be felt in different areas, but I would like to mention at least 3. From a domestic point of view, the fiscal position of the next government will matter because it will influence whether or not Germany keeps high rates of public spending, or instead it rushes to reduce its fiscal deficit. There's an ongoing debate over issues such as whether or not Germany's constitutional debt brake should be removed. So it will influence significantly the fiscal position of the next German government. Then there's the issue of climate change. A conservative government would have a different position from a progressive coalition on issues of just how fast the decarbonization of the economy should happen. Will they go for a fast push at the risk of making the German economy less competitive and at a higher fiscal cost? Or will instead the German government seek a balance between the energy transition and the protection of jobs in polluting industries? And of course, as I said at the beginning, the ideology and the composition of the German government will also impact EU policy. Will Berlin push for a faster integration in the European Union as the progressive parties want, or will it be more skeptical about sharing risk, deepening the financial integration of the Eurozone as conservative political parties want? Will there be more cooperation with Mediterranean Europe? Will Berlin support a banking union? Will Berlin agree with the idea that France, Italy, and others have that the current authorization for the European Commission to borrow from financial markets to pay for EU policy should be permanent, or will they oppose that? And what to do about Eastern Europe and all those countries that are Eurosceptic, nationalist, and question the process of European integration? Will the next government in Germany have a conciliatory approach to them, trying to appease them, or will they impose higher pressure on countries like Poland, Hungary, and many others? So, as you can see, decisions made by the next German government will not only influence policy in Germany, but also in the entire European Union.
Adriano, can you tell me who the main candidates are and, secondarily, what might happen after the vote?
The fascinating thing about German politics is that it's a multi-party political system in which coalitions are necessary to form governments. Germany has a long tradition of negotiations, cooperation, alliances between parties. Actually, most combinations of parties already exist in regional governments, which makes the outcome of the negotiations to form a government very difficult to predict. If we look at the numbers, different groups of parties could potentially form a government. What polls currently suggest is that the next German parliament will be very fragmented. Right now, we have 3 parties that are polling between 18 and 24%, and the distance between these parties is often within the margin of error of the opinion polls. We have the conservative Christian Democratic Union, which is Angela Merkel's party. We have the center-left Social Democratic Party, and we have the environmentalist Greens very close to each other. The trend right now suggests that the conservative Christian Democratic Union is losing momentum. Its candidate for the chancellorship, Armin Laschet, is not very popular. He's not seen as a qualified leader. We also see the center-left Social Democratic Party on the rise, which seemed totally unexpected and unpredictable 6 months ago. And we see the Greens, which used to poll very strongly at the beginning of the year, now seeming to be losing momentum. They will probably have a good result compared to the previous election, but maybe not as good as originally thought. Against this backdrop, there's a few things that we know for sure. I insist, we know that there will be a fragmented parliament. We know that there will probably be a coalition of 3 parties, which is not very common in Germany. Germany has traditionally had coalitions of 2 parties, and if polls are to be trusted, this time around at least 3 parties will be needed, which could create problems in the negotiations. And of course, we know that it will take months to appoint the next German government. In 2013, it took 3 months for political parties to agree on a coalition and appoint a government. In 2017, it took 6 months to form a government. So we will know how many seats in parliament each of the parties get after the election, but we will probably not know who will be in charge of the German government maybe until late 2021 or early 2022. We know for sure that while the ideological composition of the next government matters for the fiscal policy, environmental policy, EU policy issues that I discussed before, we know that it will probably be a centrist, a moderate government. The parties have ruled out cooperation with the far-right Alternative for Germany party, so we know for sure that it will not be a member of the next German government. And there is also the far-left Die Linke party, which will probably also be excluded from the coalition talks. So even if we can't predict the exact composition of the next German government, there is a very high chance that it's a moderate, pro-European government in Berlin.
What challenges await the next German government?
Well, the next German government faces many challenges. To begin with, it will have to deal with an uneven recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Europe and the rest of the world are not out of the woods yet. While the vaccination campaign in Europe has made significant progress over the past few months, the pandemic is still here. Governments across the world may need to impose additional measures. We also are expecting an uneven recovery in the European Union. Northern Europe will probably return to pre-pandemic GDP levels faster than Southern Europe, which will create headaches for EU policymakers because they will have to deal with a recovery that is happening at different speeds. The next German government will also have to decide what kind of relationship it wants to have with countries like Russia and China. Angela Merkel's legacy in this regard is quite ambivalent because she thought she tried to have a combination of political pressure but also good economic ties. For instance, under Merkel, Germany chose to sanction Russia because of its illegal annexation of Crimea. but it also supported the controversial Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline that will bring Russian natural gas to Germany. Under Merkel, Germany was also critical of human rights violations in China, while it simultaneously pushed for an investment agreement with Beijing. So the next government in Berlin will have to decide what kind of relationship it wants to have with global superpowers like Russia and China. There's also the issue of climate change. The European Union has recently approved a package of measures known as the Green Deal to take CO2 emissions to zero by 2050, but this will require lots of policy decisions that the German government will try to influence. And what will happen if the global economy does not recover as quickly as expected? What if some EU member states start missing their CO2 reduction targets? These are all policy questions that the next German government will have to answer. And finally, of course, there's the issue of relations with the United States. For the better part of the last 6 or so decades, of course, NATO membership was the cornerstone of Germany's military policy. But we have countries like France saying that the European Union should develop its own strategic autonomy on military and security issues. So what will the next German government do about this? Will they push for close ties and significant alignment with the United States, or will they side with France and others on the issue of trying to make the EU more autonomous in this context of a global competition between superpowers? So lots of significant questions that the German government will have to face after the general election on September the 26th. And as you said at the beginning, it will have to answer these questions without the experienced Angela Merkel in charge. So it will be breaking ground, it will be a new territory, no matter who the next chancellor is.
Adriano Bassoni is Stratfor Senior Europe Analyst at RANE. Thank you, Adriano.
Thank you, Emily.
Stay ahead of geopolitical developments in Germany and the EU. Sign up today for the free Worldview newsletter from RANE. Find out more at worldview.stratfor.com. That's worldview.stratfor.com. I'm Emily Donahue. Thanks for listening.